Hey everybody, how you doing today? It's Adam Tracy, and I want to put everybody to sleep today and talk a little bit about economic substance laws in BVI. And I've espoused BVI for a long time here on this platform for crypto projects for multiple reasons, a multitude of reasons, right? Asset protection, privacy, cost, ease of regulation, everything. But now this tricky economic substance thing comes to be, right? And economic substance at its core, which is promulgated from these sort of amorphous OECD, FATF, all these international sort of regulatory commissions that don't really have sway, but they have sway. And what it basically says is like, we're getting rid of shell companies, offshore shell companies, okay? And what they want you to have, and we saw this in Belize, right? Belize was a premier destination for offshore entities until they enacted very significant economic substance rules, which requires you to have an office space, have employees, right? Irrespective of whether you operate from there or not. So like in Belize, it's decimated the offshore industry because for non-regulated entities, now in addition to just having a corporation, you have to have an office that is quote unquote suitable for the level of operations that you intend to proceed with, right? So that could mean if you were a multi-million-dollar company that you would need to rent like an entire floor and have employees who effectively do nothing, right? And that's costly and it's somewhat silly, but that's the point, right? So BVI had kind of bucked that trend for a long time. And then finally, a few months ago, that train sort of stopped, right? And so what you have is like an economic substance requirement as it relates to like what are called relevant activities. What are relevant activities? Fund management, IP holding companies, right? Equity holding companies, proprietary trading companies. Anything that has to do with shipping, which isn't very relevant. But the reality is, if you're fallen within those relevant activities, 18 months or 6 months after your first annual report, you have to file another report with the government, with the FSC, that certifies you're complying with economic substance rules. So it's very tricky, right? It's very tricky. Like for crypto firms, the question is, what are you really doing, right? If a holding company is merely holding assets but not earning profit from those assets, it's not a relevant activity. If it's holding IP but not earning profits from that IP, it's not a relevant activity. But you can see where this is going, right? For tax benefits and other reasons, where there's money flowing into BVI, BVI is saying, we want our take. We want you to go rent an office in Tortola, or we need you to hire 3 of our people to do whatever. And for like fund management, right, where BVI is massive, because even as I mentioned before, the majority of the world's hedge funds are in Cayman Islands, but the majority of the world's fund managers are in BVI because of its approved fund manager regime, which is so easy versus Cayman Islands SEMA licensing regime. Well, now all of a sudden, instead of, having a approved fund manager in BVI, you may also need to have an office there and people there, right? Commensurate with the operations of the fund. So if it's a very big fund, you may have to have like a whole office with people, and like people may not have anything to do, right? I've seen this in the context of licensing where people, like in Puerto Rico, for instance, where you have to have an office and like a certain number of people, you're hiring people, which is great and helps the local economy. So like I'm for that, but they may not have anything to do, right? It's sort of like these ghost jobs, but you have to pay them and they like answer your chat on your website or do something. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, but that is something to contend with, right? It's not something that you necessarily immediately have to contend with right now because it's sort of this grace period of about 18 months, right? But it's something to contend with. So when you're looking at BVI, depending on what you do, you have to take a hard look. And there's self-assessments, and I'll put one on my website. There's a BVI economic substance self-assessment. I'll put it on the website, Adam Tracy, tracy.io, and you can take a look at it. And so before you make the decision to jump to BVI versus like a Nevis, which still hasn't done this because Nevis is a little piratey, take a look at it and see if economic substance is something that you want to contend with, if you have to contend with it at all, because it's pricey and it involves you to, you know, run around, do work, get an office, maybe go there. It's not the worst place to go, but still you have to do these things. So if you have questions, obviously hit me up as always, adam@adamtracy.io, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you.